That was a good one. So true, right, Maya? So true. Good morning. Blessed to be part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Joining us now is our old friend. He's on the trail, candidate for lieutenant governor, former chairman of the Idaho State Republican Party, man of the world, a veteran of the Bush-Cheney White House, the Heritage Foundation. He's done a lot of other things, but his resume is so long, so distinguished. Look, I can't do it justice, but Steve Yates joins us once again. Certainly we enjoy speaking with you. Thank you for joining us, sir. Hello, Steve Yates.
Good morning, Kevin. Sorry about that. I guess we left out the most important part, been calling in to Kevin Miller since 2012.
Since 2012, we go back to the days when you were on the trail with our friend J.D. Hayworth of Newsmax Television, former congressman and distinguished fellow. But how are you?
Doing well. Greetings from the Magic Valley. I'll make my way back to the Treasure Valley later this afternoon. But woke up bright and early this morning to find out that received the endorsement of the Times News here in Twin Falls. So as a candidate, we're always grateful to receive an endorsement, even though we conservative Republicans have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the media that offers them.
So true, and most of us in the media have a love-hate affair with ourselves as well.
Exactly.
As we've talked about in the past, it's a contrast between self-loathing and self-delusional in the media circles.
Yeah, I don't know that politics is a mirror or a Siamese twin of the media and actually what we do and the high esteem the public holds both of us in.
Speaking of which, have you ever thought about, since you've been on the road so much, why in the world you decided to do this?
Well, truth of the matter is, I think actually what you're doing and what a lot of other people are doing that are engaged in politics and watching what's going on in our government and our communities, and you do a ton of community engagement and you get that feedback too. We care about what's happening. And if you really care about where you live, you want to try to engage people who are building things and serving other people and try to make it a better place for ourselves, our children, and basically the reason I got involved, I saw some very impressive examples of leadership over the course of my life and just felt like, particularly in 2014 when I finally settled a bit with my family and my business, I saw some leadership in politics that just wasn't up to the snuff that I thought should be there. And I wanted to make sure that our leaders were able to explain where they stood on major issues. And if they disagreed, I figured I could be civil and talk through that. But if they couldn't explain why they were against something I favored or why they favored something I was against, or worse, were on both sides of an issue, I just felt like we needed to push for higher standards of leadership and governance. And so that's why I got involved. In that 14 cycle, I didn't win, but I felt it was very rewarding to go out and engage the community and make a case and to push for the things that I believed in. I think it was also a nice life lesson that you don't win everything that you try, although we do hope so in this endeavor, that you learn, you grow, but more importantly, other people have a chance to take your measure. And sometimes the Lord has a different path for you. So later for me in that year, it was an interesting, different kind of challenge I hadn't planned on, and that was leadership of the Republican Party. But ultimately get involved because you believe that there's a need, your life skills match somewhat with those needs, and you care about trying to make where you live a better place. And maybe you also care about the core values that your parents have taught you and that your life experience has brought to you should get translated into policy and measurable results. So that's my focus.
Our great friend Steve Yates joining us. What does the lieutenant governor do? I mean, I guess now you've been on the trail so long, everybody's been paying attention. You've been doing the circuit back and forth. But, really, what does this person do that has caused so many people to jump into this race?
Well, it's an important question, and it's one that I think most voters have not engaged nearly as much as other offices, which is understandable. And so as it's getting closer to May 15, they do wonder this. Traditionally, the lieutenant governors have focused a bit on developments in the state house. For the last generation, though, from David Leroy through to the current lieutenant governor, there's been a focus on economic development, promotion of trade and investment. Of course, Governor Otter, before he was Governor Otter, one of his long-serving positions was lieutenant governor, and he'd been in charge of international development for Simplot. And so it was a natural fit for him to advocate trade and development opportunities in Idaho, and that's an important part of this. The lieutenant governor position is an executive branch position. The legislature's in session for 3 months of the year. The lieutenant governor, the current one, has been lieutenant governor for just over 2 terms and has voted on the number of times you can fit on your 2 hands. So obviously it's a much more important role in serving and helping to succeed in the executive branch. And it's one of the things that I've found the greatest resonance in traveling around the state is I've been blessed to serve with executive experience at a staff level working in national security, but also at the most senior levels of the federal government. And for an executive job, there are a lot of people running in the race that say that experience matters, and they don't actually have a day of experience in the executive branch of government. And I think that there were lessons that I learned in working in the White House that could help inform some processes and decisions that the next governor might want to consider, but also that there's complementary skills that can help that governor succeed beyond the Capitol. And ultimately, that's what matters most. The people of Idaho don't live in the Capitol. We need to go where they are. We need to engage our local governments, I think, much, much more, and basically go find out how do we take pebbles out of the shoes of people and families and businesses to help so they can succeed more on their own, and just really help get out there and engage the real Idaho.
Our great friend Steve Yates joining us here. What about the tone of the campaign? How's it been?
Well, it's been sunshine and unicorns every day. Just one more paradisical day after the other. Well, I put it this way. I think a lot of your listeners will have heard things about the governor's race, and people have formed opinions about the competition there and maybe some sharp elbows that are being thrown. The glass half full part of that is that in this cycle, it's very, very clear that the endorsement or nomination of the Republican Party matters a great deal. There's some people that are fighting very, very hard to get it, and there's some of their supporters are fighting very, very hard for them to get that nomination. And why that matters this cycle, I think, is because it's a very important change opportunity. With the Trump administration in place, the next governor of Idaho should have a freer hand to try to put forward and implement Idaho solutions, where the current governor had spent most of his time in office with an Obama administration that didn't have that point of view. And so the choices before Idaho were more limited. Now they should be more expansive, and I think it's an exciting opportunity for the next governor. And so I think that's made people much, much more competitive in trying to go after it. So that leads to some of the jabs. In the lieutenant governor's race, there's been a few things cycling out there. I've been somewhat fortunate to be perceived as a front runner from the beginning, and I think that when you are perceived as being ahead, others feel the need to try to chop you down to measure up. And so I've been on the receiving end of a few glorious compliments along this journey. But when you treat it like a job interview and you tell people, these are the experiences of my life, they're people who can do lots of different service over the course of their lifetime, and you can ask them what they do. And have they volunteered their time in a meaningful way to their party? Have they come in at meaningful times when leadership was required? Have they accomplished things that would be seen as of value if done in a different office in a different time? How do they match up with different gubernatorial candidates to help them succeed in promoting economic development and trade, or the homeland security missions that a governor has that we don't want to think about because it's awful to think about? How would they help the next governor succeed in building coalitions of support for a new policy agenda out among the grassroots of the party and around the entire state? And the case that I've made is that I have experience in each of those areas. Mine isn't better or worse than the others, just different. And I think this is a different time and opportunity. And so far, that's met with some pretty strong approval around the state. And that has made others feel more competitive, and maybe they want to say a thing or two about other candidates. But I've tried to focus on honoring the principle that I declared at the outset of I will honor the best positive case that every candidate wants to make for their public service. We need more good, qualified people to engage, contend, and step forward to serve.
Sure. Now, I wrote a piece at KIDOTalkRadio.com. By the way, Steve Yates joining us, candidate for lieutenant governor, about what Ronald Reagan would think. And whether it's your race, whether it's the congressional race, I think really every race in Idaho, everybody has violated Reagan's 11th commandment. So at the end of this, we're going to have a primary May 15th. Then the 17th, there's going to be a unity rally. Before that, we, along with your former compatriots that you used to run, the Idaho State Republican Party, we're having a unity breakfast at Terry's in Meridian, and then we're all going to go to the state capitol. What's going to be the state of the Republican Party, considering your race, the governor's race, every race? We've had some people going at it, probably more viciously, more money spent than any race imaginable.
Well, I do think that the 11th commandment, as it's attributed to Ronald Reagan, is an important one. And it's obviously important to try to find ways to bring people back together, heal wounds, and focus on the mission of our nominees and our party through the general election. As conservative Republicans, if you read and know our platform, especially the very clear and I think outstanding values of the party preamble, which I spoke about every public event I attended as a party chairman, then the task is going to be big coming out of this competitive primary process. In 2014, we basically had a two-way competition going through the primary, and it was incumbent upon both sides of that coming out the other side to try to find a way to hold things together. Ultimately, the outcome was good for the Republican Party in the general election, but that was a tough journey. With a competitive three-way race for governor and competitive races with multiple candidates in other areas with lots of legislative seats competitive. Arguably, it's going to be a bigger challenge in 2018. Hopefully, people will have their eye on the prize. I would say that not everyone has violated that commandment. There have been candidates who have focused on making their best possible case. There have been candidates who have avoided some of the sharper, direct shots at their competition, and I would put forward that I was one of those that has made every endeavor to focus on this is the proposition, these are the times, these are my experience, why you could believe what I can do, what I say, and to basically try to make the best positive case for my public service. Just like Reagan, he sometimes would employ humor to make the contrast. We do in a season of competition have to make contrast, but you don't have to try to throw mud at someone to do that. You don't have to try to undermine someone else's integrity to try to make yourself look better. And I think that's the part that gets to be a challenge in this.
Former Chairman Yates, we appreciate you. We'll see you on the trail, and we'll see you primary eve, and hopefully we'll see you during our Unity Breakfast Rally. Good luck.
You got it. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you. Okay, our great friend Steve Yates joining us. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
Most things were agreed upon, like inter-Korean relations, but was not agreed upon is the thing we're all worried about, and that's North Korea getting rid of its nukes. And that's what was being worked on to a large extent, as we noted. After the last year of missiles and nukes, a big concern not just for those on here on the Korean Peninsula, but the United States. That is why the White House in the past couple of hours has wished these discussions well, and looking forward to discussions leading up, as I noted, in the next couple of weeks for the even more important summit between Kim Jong-un and President Trump.
And there we have it. Good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Our top story throughout the world is that the Koreans met last night, the North Koreans, the South Koreans, and they're pledging peace. Now, for many of you, that it's been a while since you took world history or American history. You forgot that we're still technically at war with North Korea, and so is South Korea. There was an armistice declared, not a peace treaty. So those sides have been at war for over 50 years, the longest war, you would say, in American history. And, of course, now there seems to be some thawing, and let's hope that that happens, right? If you missed our conversation with our friend Lars Larson, we're talking about nuclear weapons and everything, and I didn't want to go all Clyde Lewis or George Norrie, but when Clyde's talking about, Clyde and Lars were talking about EMPs that would essentially just wipe out all the electronics that we've become so dependent on, that's a scary situation. And you wonder what a united Korea would mean. I know what you're saying. Well, Kevin, it doesn't really impact us in Idaho. Tell that to the people that fought in the Korean War. God bless them. We're losing more and more of those folks. They're aging out. But one of the bloodiest wars, the forgotten war, if you will. And here you have President Trump, and not to sound like Sean Hannity Jr. here, but I agree with Lindsey Graham. If this happens, Trump gets the Peace Prize. Remember when Obama got elected and he got the Nobel Peace Prize for doing what? I guess being Obama. I guess being Obama. It must be great to be Obama. Well, imagine finally ending the Korean War, where you have Moon Jae-in meeting with Kim Jong-un. Amazing what is going on in the world today. And you're not going to hear that in other places. You're certainly not going to hear that on NBC or ABC or any of the other places. And, thankfully we have a niche. When I used to work mall maintenance, I used to say to myself, I'm glad people are messy. It's job security. That's what we do here, right? It's job security. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up, Congress is going to do something about a very important issue. Before that, it's time for traffic and weather together. I know. I love that. We're actually getting ready for more and more warmer weather today, and then a little showers. And I like what we say, storms here are not like what they get in the Midwest or the South, and then a little cool off. And it's only April before we get ready for May. Do appreciate Larry Gabbert. So Congress is at it again. Capitol Hill lawmakers. Now, we're not talking about the debt. No, it's something more important. We're not talking about the deficit. No, something more important. Not talking about military funding. No, it's more important. Here is our own Jill Nato with the very latest at KIDO Talk Radio on what your Congress folks are doing.
Republican Senator Richard Burr is fed up with people trying to get animals on planes and calling them service animals when they're not. He's put out a measure that would make it illegal for someone to knowingly make a false statement to bring an animal on a commercial plane. In a news release, Burr says even emotional support kangaroos have been allowed to fly on planes, and this proposal will help clearly define what is a service animal. But some mental health advocates say tight rules may have a negative impact on patients who can really use the support of animals. Jill Nato, Fox News.
I love this. A service kangaroo. So could you imagine that? You're on a plane and you're, minding your own business. And if you're like a lot of us, you don't really enjoy the planes. You don't enjoy the, the crunched seating. Now, maybe you kind of get into it and, I'm going to get in the A section if I go to Southwest, that sort of things. But on the other hand, at 580-5436, then you have these service animals. And I love animals, as you know. My best friends are named Alabama and Carolina and Little Buster, right? They're my best friends. We have talks all the time. And when I see animals running around, I'm always, worried that something's going to happen to them, right? So the service animal situation, and you're seeing it in stores sometimes, right? Where people are running around. And with all due respect to people that love the service animals and get it, do we really need a federal law making it illegal? Then we're going to have people challenging it in court. Think about that. At 580-5436, we can debate legalizing marijuana. We can debate all these other sorts of things. But making it a criminal act if you dummy up a service charge, that your animal is needed, and who's to say that it isn't? We'll talk about it next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. KIDO Talk Radio, let's go live to New York. Tiny J. Powers joins us now. The Bill Cosby verdict out. The end of the line for the 80-year-old Cosby. That's amazing when you think about just what an iconic figure he has been from the pudding commercials to Fat Albert to really the voice or humor for generations and generations. Your thoughts, or I guess the reaction there from Philadelphia. I know you're in New York, but from Philadelphia.
The trial was very interesting. Had a different outcome, obviously, than the first one, which ended in a hung jury. But the 3 guilty verdicts on 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault yesterday. The sentencing is what's next. The judge has not set a date in that just yet. The DA seemed to think it was going to be between 60 and 90 days from now. But we, again, don't have a concrete date for that. There will be victim impact statements. There will be other things that will be, researched and looked at and everything else that will go into all of that. The judge will make that decision based on all of that. But he could get up to 10 years in prison for each of these counts. Now, if the judge gives him, a lighter sentence of maybe 5 years, because I think 5 is the least he can give him, he, is still looking at 15 years. There is a possibility he could merge those and allow him to serve them all concurrently instead of consecutively, and that would still be, 5 years for an 80-year-old man in prison. That would be significant.
Is there any chance of an appeal? Won't Thomas Mesereau file an appeal?
Yeah, he's already said he gave a really brief statement yesterday afternoon after this came out and the verdicts were read. He said that they would appeal. That I don't think surprises anybody that they've said immediately that's what they're going to do.
And here is Thomas Mesereau saying that at KIDO Talk Radio.
We are very disappointed by the verdict. We don't think Mr. Cosby's guilty of anything, and the fight is not over. Thank you.
I'm shocked that Bill Cosby was convicted of this.
A lot of people are. I've heard a lot of people say they can't believe that he actually got convicted of this, which I think is really interesting. I mean, this is the first conviction in the hashtag Me Too movement, basically. And a lot of people, I think, are surprised that someone of his celebrity and everything else was actually convicted. But I mean, you had more than 60 women who've come forward saying, yep, this is what happened to me, here's what happened to me. I mean, the stories have just been endless over the last few years.
Sure. And, of course, in this case, the judge allowed a few other people to testify that were restricted in the first one. The reason why I'm surprised is that Tom Mesereau is known, and I've worked with Tom Mesereau in the past. He has done pro bono work in the South for indigent clients, and that's where I came across him. Not as a client, but as someone covering some of his death penalty cases. But Tom Mesereau, as you know, he's the one that saved Robert Blake. He successfully defended Michael Jackson. And unlike your Better Call Saul images of attorneys that most people have, Tom Mesereau can take apart an argument, point out somebody's incompetency, and still make you feel good about it. He's an incredibly talented and brilliant lawyer. So just based on Michael Jackson and Robert Blake, I thought that Bill Cosby had a great chance on this one.
He probably thought he did too. That's probably why he hired him. I mean, he came out from the very beginning saying that, Andrea Constand was just in it for the money. And he didn't waste any time saying, okay, here's what's going on and here's why, she is bringing this suit against him and these charges have been filed and that kind of thing. I mean, he also, tried to discredit the witnesses as well. I think at one point somebody even mentioned, what's a married woman doing with Bill Cosby? It apparently did not work with this particular jury, though.
Yeah, you do have to wonder in the age of the Me Too movement, you do have people thinking that, the idea of it takes two to, and again, not defending what Bill Cosby has been convicted of here at KIDO Talk Radio, but the whole concept of, and we're all responsible adults. Well, you and I in this room, I would say you're the responsible adult, but I digress. We're all responsible for adults, and the whole concept of it takes two to tango. Of course, you could say that about one or two incidents. When you have over 60, then there's a pattern, I believe.
Well, see, and I think that's an interesting point. You're not the first person to make that one this morning. The fact that, if it was one or two or three, that was different. But when it was 60, that was more substantial. And I think the reverse of that argument is probably, why weren't the first three believed? Why does it have to take 60 women to come out and say, yes, this is what happened? At what point did the first three become believable?
Well, again, a different time. This took place a long time ago. Not defending those actions, but again, people look at Harvey Weinstein, look at all these other folks that got away with it for years. And until this movement came to light, it was a very different world than we live in today.
That is a very accurate statement.
I will take that as a compliment, ma'am.
You should.
Any surprises last night? Did you watch any of the NFL draft?
I did not. I was in the movie theater watching Infinity War.
And?
I saw Infinity War.
And?
I will give you no spoilers. I'm not doing that to your listeners.
Well, we appreciate you looking out for the listeners. I just was looking for a review. You're very defensive this morning. I couldn't see why you would be defensive with us. But Infinity War, how would you grade it in comparison to, let's say, Black Panther or Captain America, some of the other great Marvel films?
Oh wow! I don't even know if I could actually, and I'm not trying to get out of the question. It's just, if you see the movie, you'll understand why I'm having trouble comparing it.
Okay, is it, the best ever? Let me lead the witness on that one, ma'am.
Yeah, I can't give you that either.
Wow.
I refuse to walk down this primrose path with you, Mr. Miller. Today, I just can't.
Sadly, I get that a lot in life. Okay.
I would be interested to know what your listeners think of it, especially the Marvel fans.
Finally, is it worth going to?
Yeah, I think it's had so much hype. People have been looking forward to this movie for so long. And I think that it's going to have a huge box office, especially following, the success of Black Panther, which was amazing. I think a lot of people are going to have to go to see what happens in this, because it's had so much hype, it's had so much build up, and it's going to be a huge movie, I'm telling you.
Fair enough. We'll let you out on that one.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
All right.
Our great friend Tanya J. Powers joining us. By the way, congratulations to now former Boise State player Leighton Vander Esch, who is drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, thanks to our friends at the Idaho Statesman. This was the reaction in Riggins to Mr. Vander Esch getting drafted by the Cowboys. Here you have a kid who was a walk-on, built himself up into this, incredible athlete, incredible player, now going to play for America's team. Glad to see dreams coming true. Our phone numbers, 580-5436, 580-KIDO, 645. At the NFL draft last night, the number one pick, Baker Mayfield, was a reach for the Cleveland Browns, but, Cleveland's kind of used to that. But I think if you watched a little of it, by the way, it was on the Big Fox last night, you had to love this.
Comes Roger Goodell to open the draft, and he's joined by some special guests, all former winners of the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year Award presented by Nationwide, and also Cowboys royalty.
By the way, this is just nonstop booing of Roger Goodell. If you're trying to wake up this morning, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio.
Welcome, football fans, to the 2018 NFL Draft, Texas style. I can't believe you guys are booing the Cowboys. Come on. Thank you all for being here, and for all of you tuning in across the country to welcome our future NFL stars. We already have a record tonight. of the greatest men to ever play for the Cowboys. All three.
And there we have it. Roger Goodell getting booed last night. Jason Witten, Roger Staubach, and Troy Aikman throwing out the footballs. And, as someone who loves sports, and, people are going to be talking about Leighton Vander Esch all day long, and that's the A story. That's great, but one of the things that I've often said at 580-5436 is sports is great, but politics, governance, accountability is where it's at. Yes, you're never going to get a stadium filled up to watch a presidential debate. You might get Dave & Buster's filled up to watch a debate, but you take a look at just how much we focus in on the NFL draft. And my question to you is, are our lives so mundane that we need this type of delusion? We need this type of distraction? Think about the technological advancements, unemployment doing well, the idea that, we've got record low unemployment. And people are talking about the NFL draft, which is great, I suppose, but then don't complain about other things, right? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you, Ray Amai. Good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'll talk a little bit about the Avengers Affinity War in a minute, but first, let's go to Hank in Boise at KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Hank.
Good morning. You had a caller that you repeated in your repeat hour who did a real good job of pointing out the problems with Alquist's candidacy. And one of the things that he pointed out was the wobbliness of Alquist on the question of when the statements came out, those tapes came out on basically backing away from any kind of, and that was my problem with Simpson, and that was my problem with Crapo, and to a certain extent with Risch. Hillary Clinton, by her actions as Secretary of State, let alone the corruption and all the other stuff that swirls around this woman, by her actions, had to be stopped at all costs. If you believed in the principles of this country, if you believed in constitutional government, and if you believed, and you don't want to turn this country into a social democracy, like, for instance, like that of Germany or France, you had to fight this woman at all costs. And they didn't have that sense of urgency. They treated it like she was a possible acceptable alternative. There was no other alternative to Hillary but Trump. And the fact that they didn't feel that sense of urgency, to me, sent alarm bells all over the place. That I don't know if I could fully trust them. And the fact that Alquist could not see that, to me, makes me question. I mean, I didn't start out as a Trump supporter. I started out as a Ted Cruz, and I believe that, if I'm not mistaken, so did Raul Labrador. But when it came to...
No, he started out with Rand Paul.
Rand Paul, that's correct. You're correct. You are correct on that. But the point of it was that he was prepared to back Trump at all costs to stop Hillary.
But to the point, you had Butch Otter, who went with Chris Christie, and then John Kasich, then Chris Christie, or vice versa, and then he
Christie
didn't
first, and then Kasich.
Right, and then he, his wife campaigned for Trump. Congressman Labrador went with Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, and then Trump. And to his point, he's the only one that embraced Trump. You had Jim Risch, Mike Simpson make statements. Being generous, we're agnostic towards the Republican nominee. You had Mike Crapo say something unfortunate, then he reversed his decision on that. I mean, let's throw it out to people at 580-5436. Is it a big deal that somebody didn't back Trump when, in fact, a lot of people didn't back Trump in this state? And you wondered, look at Utah. I'm still trying to figure the state out because, you have people that are still, in my opinion, lukewarm to President Trump. You tell me.
Well, the point of it is, and with 50-50 hindsight, because I didn't see it at the time, Trump was the only one of the candidates now. It's clear to see that could have defeated Hillary. Hillary had to be stopped. There was no. I mean, if we wanted the country as a constitutional republic, she had to be stopped at all costs. And the fact that they saw her as an alternative that they were willing to accept her as president, to me, bothers me very deeply.
Well, you're making that assumption. You're not believing what Tommy Ahlquist has said. You believe that he would have thought Hillary would have been better than Trump.
No, the fact was that he didn't see what the stakes were. That he was prepared to wobble out of support, and the result would be to basically help elect Hillary. That's the point. In other words, we had to stay united.
When does the Republican Party ever stay united?
Well,
you're a team player, but depending on who wins this primary, there's going to be some situations some people are going to sit on their hands, and that might open the door for Mr. Belukoff. Hank, I got to run, but thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about his points in a minute. First, traffic. And let's see if we can... Eric, we've got about 40 seconds. Please go ahead. Eric?
Yes. My comment is that it really irritates me every time I hear the Ahlquist commercial that he invokes the Trump agenda when he didn't even vote for him. The hypocrisy just seems unbelievable and to me represents how dishonest he is in his campaign. That's my comment.
Well, your comment's always welcome at KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller in the morning, which, by the way, is your home for Fox News on the radio. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday.